All right, we'd like to welcome you all back to our discipleship seminar. We're going to start our mid-morning session. So I want to introduce my friend Marius DuPlooy. And Marius and his wife Amanda have been in ministry for about 24 years now. And their ministry I find extremely interesting. They serve the Muslim population, and they bring Christianity to the Muslims. And I think that's just an incredible thing, and I'm looking forward to hearing Marius and all that he does. They live out in Arizona, which actually makes me kind of jealous, especially on mornings like today in Ohio. When was the last time you've seen snow? It's been a while. It's been a while.
No. For the past 6 months, we live here in Ohio. Tucson, Arizona was the coldest place we lived in for the past 20 years.
For 20 years, Tucson was the coldest place until they came to Ohio. So, but we've had our share of snow this year. But what I'd like to do is introduce you to Marius DuPlooy, and he's going to talk to us about discipleship to Muslims and just his version of discipleship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. When I read what I'm going to speak about, I was very impressed. It says, the workshop will take you on a journey to understanding basic concepts of Islam, hear case studies and tools to share the gospel. They will demonstrate the model how to approach Muslims within your reach. All this in 45 minutes. That is amazing. That's why I thought I'm going to skip the first part and say, if you want to know about Muslims, just Google it. It's going to help me a lot. Anyway, but you can Google it. Let me see what's going on. Okay, when it comes to Muslims, so what is the religion called that Muslims believe in? Muslim is the one who believes. But what religion? What is the name, official name of the religion? Anybody knows? Islam, very good. And what does Islam stand for? What is the meaning of the word Islam? No, unfortunately, no. Oh, well, we've got a whisperer here. Yes? Very good! Woo! She deserves a book. Anyway. Oh. Islam literally means to submit. Muslim comes from the word Islam. It means the one who submits. But I say for us as Christians, the word Islam should stand for I should love all Muslims. Islam. I should love all Muslims. Now, if you think of Muslims and Islam, they're about 1.6 billion of the population of the world population, 1 to 1.6 billion. When it comes to the church sending out missionaries into the world, for every 10 missionaries that the church sends out to go and evangelize, to preach the gospel, how many of those 10 missionaries do you think go and work amongst Muslims? I hear half, so that's 5. I hear 1. Oh, 0.5. Sorry, man. Yes, you guys are right. It's 1. Okay. So why do you think? Well, why is it so? Oh, thank you for doing that. Why do you guys think? Why is this number so low? I like this one. It's not easy. Very good. Wow, I like that as well. Hard climate, heat. Yes, you mean that we as Westerners, we can't live in that climate? Wow, I like that as well. Wow, all of you are so correct. There are so many multiple reasons. But in the end, you know, what is the thing? Yeah, it's not easy. We don't see Muslims convert right and left. You know, I had people telling me, Christians in the church, after I spoke about reaching Muslims, they told me, Why do you care about these godless people? They don't care about following God. Look at ISIS, look at Al-Qaeda, look at Muslims all over the world. They don't care anything about religion and Jesus. Why do you care about preaching the gospel to them? And all I can say is that, it makes me think of the parable that Jesus talked about, or about the one lost sheep. Jesus said in that parable, he leaves the 99 good sheep, and he goes after that one who has turned his back against him. Look at the Apostle Paul. What was Paul but a fanatical guy who killed Christians? And look how God turned Paul around. And I can testify to you that I've seen Muslims come to Christ. They're some of the most beautiful people. Once they're like flowers who spring up, and they're 100% committed to following Jesus. Oh, yeah. Why should we reach Muslims? First one is because of love, the love that we receive from God. One thing that I can tell you is that for Muslims, what are the reasons Muslims serve God? Let me just see if there's any guess. What are the reasons? What's the motivation behind serving God? Yes, to gain God's approval. And behind that approval is, do you think they know where they will go when they die? No. So if you don't know where you go if you die, your motivation to serve God is fear. Okay? But what should a Christian's motivation be to serve God? Yes. Many times I tell this story. It's a story that that just came to my mind, is how to show the difference between the God of Christianity and the God of Islam. Is that, I say, in the Middle East on Fridays, usually all the guests come to one person's house, the father, and he is responsible to host them, to serve them tea and cookies and all of that. And usually his sons help him. So I tell this story. I said there were these two fathers with each one had a son. The first father was always he spoke very harsh to his son. And he always slapped his son whenever he did just a tiny thing wrong. So this Friday came, and this father was responsible to host everybody. And at the gathering, he shouted to his son, "Son, go and make tea." Son went into the kitchen, he made the tea, and he served everybody. This was the first father and son. The second father and his son was the example of a loving relationship. The second father always showed love towards his son and couldn't wait how to help his son and spoke softly. The Friday came again, and it was this father's turn to host everybody. And again, he asked his son, "Son, will you please go and make tea for us?" Son went and made the tea and served everybody. So you've got these two sons. Both went, obeyed their father, and they both went and made the tea and served the people. But what is the difference between these two sons? Why did the first son do it? Out of fear. Why did the second son do it? Out of love. And that's the basic difference between Christianity and Islam. Okay, so love, the next one, just go back. Obedience, So what was Jesus' last command to us? Go and make disciples. And what's interesting, when Jesus started that paragraph, started with, "All authority on earth and heaven has been given to me." And what does he do with all that authority? He gives it back. That's so awesome. God makes us part of his love for the world and to reach it. So obedience. The next one is, this is the character of God. We say God is love. And through witnessing to other people, to sharing the gospel throughout the world, we experience the character of God. I've learned so much about God and my relationship with him by sharing my faith, especially with Muslims. What should be our approach? You find it in Luke 2:46, where it says, After 3 days, they found him. This was when Jesus was separated at 12 years old from his family. It says, after 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them, and asking them questions. And I want to tell you this morning, you don't need a lot to know about Muslims. If you just practice this, sitting among them, listening to them, and asking them questions. Through this method, you will get into their hearts. And I can tell you honestly, I mean, when I heard about how many denominations and how many Christians there are in the world, what I found with Muslims is that each Muslim believes differently about God. So it doesn't matter if you go and learn from a book what are Muslims supposed to believe. Once you start to speak with a Muslim, you will get to know that, wow, but this guy is different. He believes so and so. And so each person is uniquely made, and has a special way in which he sees God. I've given up. I remember in the beginning of my missionary career, I was always looking for the golden key that unlocks the Muslim heart. After 30 years, I found that there's no such key, unfortunately, because each person has a unique key that unlocks his heart or her heart. And it shows me how special each one of us is in God's eye. So it's through talking to them, through sitting them, through spending time with them. We call it kind of an incarnational model that Jesus showed us, how he reached out to people. Yesterday, I went to the mosque with one of my friends at 12 in the afternoon. And I visited with him until 1 o'clock last night. When I came back, I looked at my schedule, and I realized, oh, shucks, I have this thing today. But we need to spend time with them. And one thing that I always find very encouraging is Jesus himself. Just think of it. He spent 30 years living amongst the people before he started his ministry. 30 years. He knew what they believed. He knew what images would speak to them in his parables because he knew them by heart. This is just a short, I just need to check my time. I always think of, when I think of time in presentations, I think of my time in Sudan. In Sudan, where I once worked, they told me, you know what? Oh, I went to a conference. It was supposed to start at 1, and it only started at 4, so 4 hours late. They told me, you know what? In the West, you've got watches. In Sudan, we've got time. Anyway, so let me go back to this. Okay. So God called me in 1995. I was 23 years old. And I woke one morning, I woke up with the words, Marius, you have to go to Egypt. And I just knew, it was not an audible voice in my head. But I just knew in my heart this was from God. So I packed my bags, and the next month I went on an airplane to Egypt. And right there in Egypt, it was so wonderful how God confirmed that this is the place where he wants me to be. Because even though I'm South African, the Arabs, when they saw me, the Egyptians, they immediately started to speak Arabic with me. And the reason for it is, for some godly reason, I look like an Arab. So whenever they see me, they start to speak Arabic. Even today, they see me as an Arab. Even when I tell them, no, I'm from South Africa, they say, no, you're lying, man, you're some kind of Arab. And my Arabic got so good, they told me, yo, even your Arabic is better than us. So then in 1996 to 99, I was back traveling as a missionary for all those countries, for Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Sudan. And during that time, I met my wife in Egypt. She was also from South Africa. God called her a year after me, and we met in 98. And the interesting thing for me about Egypt is we were 3 single guys in Egypt, South African, and all 3 of us wanted to get married to South African women. So we all prayed together Today, all three of us are married to South African ladies whom we've met in Cairo. So God answered the prayer of a believing bachelor. I'm sure we can find a navigator verse for that. Okay, and then in 2002, me and my wife, we went and lived in Yemen. Here you can see where Yemen is, a very safe place. And then in 2010 to 2017, we lived in Oman. Just go to the next slide. So there's the city of Hodeidah, and we lived exactly where that arrow is. Oh, you can go back. That's a nice me younger. Okay. In Hodeidah, we lived about 200 kilometers from the border of Saudi Arabia. And one of the things that we discovered, you know, when God calls you to go to another country, there's a lot you sacrifice, you know, and your own family and friends, and you need to get a lot of money to go there. You jump on an airplane and all that effort. And once you're there, you know, you've obeyed God's command to go and share the gospel. Once you're there, don't think that all the Arabs and Yemenis, Omanis, whoever, are going to run to you and thank you that you've come to share the gospel with them. It doesn't work like that. Once you're there, then you have to go out. You have to intentionally go out and share the gospel. You have to go out and seek them. And so many times, you know, I used to go to the coffee shops there in Yemen. And the interesting thing is they call it coffee shops, but they don't serve coffee there, only tea. But it's called coffee shops. Anyway, so at one of those nights, I went out. I didn't want to. And it's interesting for me, so many times the nights when I didn't want to go out, I said, okay, just go out. Just push yourself. I went out and shared the gospel with two guys at one of these coffee shops. His name was Ibrahim and Ahmed. So I shared the gospel with these two guys for 5 hours. And after 5 hours, he said, I want the Bible. And I said, okay, let's go to my flat, and I gave each one of them a Bible. And I greeted him, didn't take any names, but the next day I was going to pay my phone bill. There in the street I bumped into Ibrahim. Immediately in the middle of the street he took out the Bible, and I gave him the Gospel of Luke. And by that time he told me he has read now half of the Gospel of Luke, and he says, he just has one problem. He reads and reads, but nobody does it tell or say, how do you become a Christian? I told him, no, Ibrahim, let's meet each other tonight again, and I will tell you how to become a Christian. So that night, he had loads of questions. And one of his questions was, he says, what is there in it for me to become a Christian? What are the advantages of becoming a Christian? Advantages. And I opened it at Luke 14, which talks about the cost of discipleship, where it says, anyone, if you are not, if a disciple, if he is not willing to take up and carry the cross, is not worthy to be my disciple. When he read that, I said, do you understand what this means, Ibrahim? He says, yes, it means I must go and buy a wooden cross and hang it around my neck. I had to explain to him, no, you must be willing to give your whole life. And then by the third night, we made an appointment for the third night. By the third night, he told me that he's an electronic engineer that works in Mecca in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you know, but Mecca, it's forbidden for Christians to enter and live in Mecca, the most holiest city of Islam. But he told me he's going at 8 o'clock the next morning, he's going back to Mecca. And I wanted to know from me, and then I realized, shucks, man, I haven't told him how to become a Christian. And then I explained to him how to pray. And he said, no, man, I prayed that last night. So by finishing the Gospel of Luke, by the end, through the guidance of the Holy Spirit, he gave his heart to Jesus. And then he told me, but must I now take my Bible back with me, or bring with me to Mecca? And I said, yes, how else are you going to grow as a Christian? And then he said, but at the border, they look for all your bags, not necessarily for Bibles, but for guns or illegal drugs. But they will find the Bible, and then he will be in trouble. And then he told me, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear off the cover of the Bible and take a secular book's cover and put it over the Bible. And before I could answer him, he said, oh, shucks, he said, but isn't that a sin? Because in the religion of Islam, Muslims, the physical book, the Quran, is holy. And you're not allowed to make any scratch or anything on this. The physical book is holy. You must do a certain ritual washing before you touch the Quran. So it's in that light that he asked me the question. I told him, no, it's a great idea, Ibrahim. And I went like this. He told me he just got that idea from above. So I greeted him, didn't see him. And then 1 month after that, I got a phone call in our flat. That was before the mobile phones. We only had a landline. I got a phone call, and he said, it's Ibrahim. And I said, which Ibrahim? Because I know a million Ibrahims. And he said, no, it's Ibrahim from Mecca. And I said, whoa. And he says, I just called to tell you that I'm happy. I'm still happy. And I have 6 people who are happy with me in Mecca. And with that, he put down the phone. And all the day, I got goosebumps, and I almost get goosebumps every time I tell the story. That was one of the most magnificent things that God has done. Let me just check here. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's the way me and my wife look, but this was probably, yeah, this was exactly maybe 14 years ago. I tried to see how handsome I was. But anyway, here you can see how we dress like this. How I dress in a Yemeni skirt and shirt, and there's my wife. She always dressed like that. And that is the way for them, they respect her so much when they see she's willing to dress like a Muslim lady. If she doesn't dress like this, they view her as being a prostitute. So I've got so many comments. When they see how my wife is dressed, they tell me, wow, Marius, we can see that you are a very religious man. So this was always a way for us to get into the culture. Okay, this is interesting. This is a ship, a wooden ship there. We lived in a port city, and there's this little wooden box on the side of this boat. Now, let me see. Anybody a guess? What is that little wooden box here on the side of the ship? Any guess what that wooden box would be? It's about this size. That little square box on the side of the boat. Some want to guess, but some don't want to guess. Okay, it's a toilet. And you know what was so funny? The reason I took a picture is, there in Arabic it is written, La latfan la taksar al-hamam. Please, don't break the toilet. So this was one of the ports. It's interesting for me, whenever I go to the port of Hodeida, I would see the fishermen. And interesting about the fishermen, next slide. When I see the fishermen, you know, that place is smelly, it's dirty. And I always thought that, man, is this, of all the nice places in the city of Hodeida, or this is where Jesus came to get his first disciples? Stinky fishermen? Uneducated. They spent 2 weeks. That's the kind of toilets they use. They sweat. These are the simple people that Jesus chose. And I just think to myself, if Jesus chose the simple-minded people, how much more can he use us as well? Okay, then in 2010, 2017, we worked in Oman, but I'm not going to talk about it now. Lived in Buraymi. Oh, okay. Now, this is when we lived in Oman, and this is the way the Omanis greet each other. Now, if you are, I'm not going to ask if you're strangers, but if you're a husband, a wife, or friends here, try to greet each other now with, we say nose each other. Yes, is a husband and wife doing it? Nice, woohoo! Yes, if you want to do it, okay? I know it's probably not advisable during COVID, But if you feel free that you want to expose yourself to the other person in this way, very good. But this was a way to get into the culture. And when I would just stick my hand out to somebody, they would say, "What, are you arrogant today?" "No, man, knows me." And this is the way they knows me. And for me, there's one incident. I'm always checking the time. When I think of God's love for the Arabs, and for Muslims, and for Yemenis, there's one particular incident in Hodeidah that happened. And what happened was, I was in my car. It's a very poor city, so there's 1 million little motorcycles, people with motorcycles, broken up, dirty motorcycles that you find in third world countries, and they serve as taxis. Anyway, but when you see these little, they're everywhere, but you can't really see them always in your rear view mirrors. And I was in my car and I wanted to make a right turn, but I didn't see this guy on a motorcycle on my right-hand side. So as I turned, he also had to turn, and then he fell. And I drove a little bit on, but then I saw what happened in my rear view mirror, and I stopped. And the guy was down, and he picked up, dusted himself off, and I could see, oh my goodness, I have the maddest Arab, maddest angry Arab. And what he did is, can I ask you? So what this Arab did was, he was walking towards me, very angry, okay? Yes, wow, it looks like I chose the right guy. Now, I'm going to show you what I did to this angry Arab. What happened? So, yeah, act as if, yeah. Okay, thank you. Oh, there goes my mic. Anyway, so, when I kissed him, he went like this. What I did was, I knew immediately when that happened, that saying to him, "I'm sorry," is not going to do it. But what I did with that, by kissing him on the head, it's the ultimate way to humiliate yourself in front of somebody. It's a way to humble yourself. It's telling him, "You are much more worthy than me. I'm not worthy." I kiss you on the head. And when I got back in my car and I drove away, it's just when I heard God's voice saying, "Marius, that's what you have done for that Yemeni. That's who I am for the Yemenis. I'm the one who have come down, humbled myself, lowered myself, and I'm the one who kissed them on their heads." And it fits perfectly with Philippians 2, verse 5 to 6, where it says, Jesus, being in very nature God, or didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped on, but he made himself lower and humbled himself, becoming a human being, and he humiliated himself by dying on the cross. And that's when I realized that the God of Christianity, God is so in love with his creation that he's willing to humiliate himself. And I found that this is the biggest difference between the God of Christianity and the God of Islam. And I've tested it with so many of my Muslim friends. I've asked them, tell me in Yemen, tell me, can you imagine God kissing you on your head? And they all told me, no, that's blasphemy. The God of Islam will never do that. He's too great, he's too big. In Oman, I've tested with one of my friends. I told him, Khamis was his name. I told him, Khamis, can you imagine God nosing you? And he told me, no, I can't, Marius. And he said, you know, Marius, I don't know if I believe in your God, but I like him. How awesome is that? This is the way I spend time with the Omani Arabs. And I spent thousands of hours in the coffee shops. This is my wife Amanda with some of her friends there in Oman. And she led one Muslim lady to the Lord. And that was just awesome. Next. So when we think of Muslims, we don't think, we want to get rid of the word Muslim. or Islam. Because once you use a term that generalizes a whole group of people, you put a distance between you and them. Once you brand them Muslims. But me and my wife always says that we don't work with Muslims. We work with Ahmed, Muhammad, Fatima, real people with real needs. And one thing that keeps me and my wife going is that it's Revelation 7, verse 9 to 10, where it says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language." Arabs will be up there. Standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. And they cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, which sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." And one thing that me and Amanda, every Muslim that we work with, in our spiritual eye, we see them raising their hands and praising God, praising the Lamb in front of the throne. These are 5 Yemenis who came to Christ while we were in Yemen. I definitely don't have time to talk about all of them, but the guy on the left, on the top, his name is Muhammad. I always say the most powerful prayer you as a Christian can pray is, "God, may Muhammad come to Christ today." Because by the word Muhammad, you've covered a couple of million of people by one word. And if you throw in an Ahmed and an Ibrahim, so Muhammad, he was a radio contact. A radio contact meaning there was a Christian radio station in Cyprus, and they always broadcasted Christian messages to the whole Arab world. And Muhammad was a guy who listened to them, and then he wrote in requesting a Bible. And because he lived in my area, in my city, his name was given to me, and I followed up with him. And after 6 months, spending time with him, reading the Bible, we finally asked him, "Muhammad, are you ready to give your heart to Christ or to accept Jesus?" And he said, "Yes, but he has only one question." He says, "Tell me, if I become a Christian and I sin, does it cancel my Christianity?" And we told him, no, it's just like a father with his children. If his children are naughty and disobedient, it doesn't make them his children anymore. They stay his children. And he said it makes sense. And he gave his heart to Christ. And it was so great to see the tears flowing from his eyes when he gave his heart to Christ. And he said it felt like, we asked him, "How do you feel?" And he says, "It feels like a big weight has been lifted off his shoulders." And he said, one thing that happened was, he said, "You know what? When I was a Muslim, I was a slave of God. And a characteristic of a slave is, a slave never only does what is asked of him. A slave never goes the extra mile or does something more, only what is asked of him." He said, "But a son wants to give his best to his father. And this is how he feels like what has happened to him." The whole change. And he said that 5 minutes after becoming a Christian. And that was so awesome. I mean, it was always so brilliant to read the Bible with him. He had so much insight into the Bible. I remember when we read Corinthians about each Christians having different gifts. He went like, he says, "Man, this is awesome." He said, "We as Muslims are all the same. But you as Christians, everybody has a different gift." Wow, he was just amazed by it. 3 months after he became a Christian, he decided to tell his wife, and he's married, 5 children, come from a small village. He decided to tell his wife, and his wife was furious. She told his father, and his father took him to prison. He said, "This is a bad son of mine. He was bad to his mother, put him in prison." But the reason was because he became a Christian. In Yemen, a father has that kind of authority. So Muhammad spent 1 month in prison. During that time, his wife and 5 children left, and she went to her village. After 1 month, his father told him, "Are you ready to become a Muslim again?" And he said, "No." His father slapped him in the face and said, "You're not my son anymore." He came to our city where he had his only job, And when he arrived there, his boss said, your father called me, you're a bad son, I must fire you. You're fired. So after 3 months of being a Christian, he lost everything. His own wife, children, his father, mother, and his job. But he always was joyful about it. And I always ask him, why, what kept you believing? And he said, it's God's presence. God's presence. He could always feel that God is with him. And after that, through the guy on the right, I'm not going to tell his whole story, but he was what I would call a severe evangelist. He just told everybody about Jesus. And 2 weeks after he became a Christian, then he was put in prison for 9 months, and they got Muhammad again, and he was spent another 9 months in prison because they became Christians. But these are all, wow, amazing stories, each one of them. Man, I don't think I've reached even half of my presentation. Maybe, forget about the slides. Anyway, maybe I can give this last 5 minutes to, are there any questions that you might have? Any questions as yes? Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh. Yes. Usually what we do is, sometimes we as Westerners, we want to take the one person out of his context, out of his family, and just read the Bible with him. But the best would be to do it with the whole family, with the father being present. That way he knows, oh, you're not doing something secretive with my daughter or whoever. So it's always good to include the whole family in it. Very nice. Yes, very good. Yes. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good question. Sometimes one of the most, the common objection from Muslims is that the Bible that we have today is corrupt. And that the Bible, that the Bible is corrupt. The original Bible is not the same as what we have today. And there are a couple of ways to do that. One of the things was interesting is there is a verse in the Quran that says the Bible is corrupt. But there's also verses in the Quran that says, wow, the Bible is authentic and real. And so you must ask them, so when was the Bible changed? Then they say, no, it must have been changed after the time of Muhammad. But then you can tell them that, but all the manuscripts that we have predates the birth of Muhammad. So there's no way that the Bible that we have today is corrupt. That's one way of answering them. Yes. It's not necessary, yeah. Yeah, I do know the Quran, but really it's not necessary. And I think the best is to know your own Bible and present it as best as you can. Don't try to be an expert on the Quran. It's just going to frustrate them. Because you're a Christian, man. How can you tell me what I'm supposed to believe from my Quran? Okay? Just as we don't like sex, like Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't like them to tell us what the Bible is supposed to say. So they will act the same way. It's good to know the Quran, but I rarely tell them, oh, you, surah. I learned that the hard way. Shucks. I'm looking at the boss here. 5 more. Alhamdulillah. So I'm just now mistakes. Oh, okay. So when I was very young, I was 20 years old, I got my first lecture in Muslim evangelism. I got all the Quranic verses. Man, and we went door-to-door evangelism in South Africa. And I was this young Muslim guy. He was probably 22 years old. And I just threw the Quranic verses, man. And I could see this guy had no idea where I was. It was a fighting, and I was just throwing the Quranic verses. And he had nowhere to go. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, he asked me, but what about Deuteronomy 24, verse 12? I'm not sure what that verse was. We said, what about Deuteronomy 12, verse 4? I go, what? And I take my Bible, I read the verse, and I realized I have no cooking clue what's the meaning of this verse. And I was so embarrassed. All I could think is, I looked at my watch and I said, sorry, man, it's time for us to go. Big mistake, you know. But then I realized, you know, afterwards, you should also be honest and tell him, you know what, I have no idea what the meaning of it, but good question. I will come back to you. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Yes. Yeah, that's very good. Any one of the Gospels. Yes. Yes, yes. No, yes. No, that's good. Luke is good. There's one more thing I want to say, but I forgot. Anyway. Yep. Yeah.
I'd like to thank you, Marius.
Yeah.